Welcome everyone to AviaDev Inside Europe, the podcast produced for the European aviation community and brought to you by AviaDev. My name is Juraj Toth. I'm the managing director at AviaDev Europe, and this is our episode number 92. And we have a very special guest today, the one and only Jon Howell, CEO and founder at AviaDev. I started this tradition a year ago, that the last episode of the year was with a member of the team. Last year we recorded with John Barcroft, something like 30,000 feet in the air on the flight to Manchester when we were heading for our team Christmas dinner. And little we knew then that what the next 12 months will look like. But nevertheless, it's a nice tradition and we're going to continue in that also for this year. So that's why I have my good friend and boss at the same time, Jon, on the podcast. So Jon, welcome to the show.
Wow, delighted and honored to be with you, Juraj. Thank you for having me.
How does it feel to be on the other side of the table?
Yeah, it's weird being on your own show. Yeah, quite strange.
Yeah, I had that feeling when we recorded the episode with Tony Holwood back in September when we were promoting AviaDev Europe online events. So I know that feeling. So now it's your turn, I guess. So let's start with a short summary of this year, 2020. As we keep saying, a perfect storm for a company like us doing events in aviation industry. Not a really great combination for 2020. So how was that year for you, or from your perspective?
Yeah, it was amazingly long. That's the first thing. I don't know whether other people would agree with this, but normally in our working life, we have so much variety that we travel, we meet people, we have new experiences. And from the middle of March, when I returned on a flight from Addis Ababa until today, which we're recording on the 22nd of December, I haven't been on a flight. I've barely left my house. You know, we're still under lockdown in the UK. We're the pariahs of Europe and the world at the moment. Nobody wants us anyway. So it's been a really, really crazy year. But then I look back and I think, you know, you and I were together. We went to the GIAS event, the Investment in Aviation Summit in January in Dubai. I did a site visit over to Madagascar in February, just ahead of the event when we first heard the rumblings. I mean, we knew what was coming to an extent. We just didn't know how and when it was going to affect us. And then, of course, as I say, I was in Ethiopia and that was the end of that. So it's been a very strange year, but there's a couple of things that have been great, which is we've still been able, because of this amazing internet that we've got, to be connected with people and to make new connections and actually to bring more people in, because suddenly the events and the activities we put on are so accessible to people because there's no entry fee most of the time. And, you know, they just have to sign in on their computer and they can be anywhere, or their phone, and they can listen back and all the rest of it. So there are definite benefits to it. But I was thinking about this morning, and I think that there were a couple of quotes, because I know we love a quote. So there were a couple of quotes that came to mind. One's a very obvious, very overused one, which has been used a lot during the pandemic, and I think will be used in 2021, which of course is the Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And I think with the amount of change that we've seen, some organizations, airlines, airports, event companies, they've been able to pivot, they've been able to innovate, they've been able to experiment, and others haven't. And those who don't are going to struggle in this new environment because it's going to be harder than ever. But the second one, which is more personal to us, I think, is I saw this morning from Simon Sinek, who I'm sure we all know, the power of why. And he said, a small team committed to a cause bigger than themselves can achieve absolutely anything. And I thought, wow, that's such a nice quote. And I think that, you know, really our core team is me, you, and Marla. And of course, we have, not that the other guys aren't core, just that they're not on the project full time. And we've got this fantastic network. And when I say the guys and the girls, I'm talking our community, not just the people who represent AviaDev, because we're much more than just the people, myself, you, and Marla.
Absolutely. I have a couple of quotes in my sleeve as well for today's episode, but I leave that for later.
Have a quote off. I like it.
By the way, Simon Sinek, he has got a great podcast as well, which is called A Bit of Optimism. He just started it this year, so maybe we can share it later. Um, so obviously, thankfully, it was very hard, but we somehow managed to pivot. As you mentioned, we are on that side of the spectrum where we managed to survive. So from your perspective, what were the main reasons that we as a business, as AviaDev, as a team, we have survived?
Yeah, I mean, survival is an achievement this year. No matter who you are and what you've been through, I'm sure we've all been negatively impacted by the pandemic. So just to get through it, and that's this year. We're not through the pandemic, unfortunately, but we're through the year pretty much. And I think that from our side, it was about, we're a small business in terms of the numbers that we've got, but we also act like a small business. We're very entrepreneurial in terms of, if you have an idea, if I have an idea, we don't sit in a boardroom for 6 days and figure out how we're going to do it. We just get on with it. So we were fast. That's the first thing. We were quick to market. And I have to have a big mention here for the chairman of Bench Events, Jonathan Worsley, because he saw this coming and he said, we need to pivot quick. And we'd released and hosted the first global hospitality online conference post-pandemic about 4 weeks after the lockdown started. It was like mid-April, and it was an incredible event considering the short period of time that we had to put it on. So I think it starts with leadership that allows you that flexibility and freedom to explore things. So I think, we've been entrepreneurial. We've also not been afraid to experiment, to innovate. We've not been afraid to just turn our cameras on and start a webinar and have a chat with people. And also, we've had I would like to think for both of us, the best, we've had the best will for the communities that we serve. We saw that actually we have a role to play here, which is getting information out to people and keeping people connected to what's happening in the industry, try and make sense of it, but also to keep those friendships and those networks together, which is so hard to do in a virtual world. But I know that loads of conversations have come off the back of our events and just off our social media, not between us and them, but between individuals that have engaged with that. And they're the kind of stories that I think, and those relationships we'll see blossom over the next few years. So, it's about not being afraid to try new things. We've done all these new formats this year. You've done loads of that. We keep challenging each other. And when you've had a bad day or when things are not going well, it's a case of putting that to bed and waking up the next morning and trying to be as optimistic as you can. In the environment, it's not going to help any of us sitting around and lamenting our situation. We have to just make the best of what we've got so that we're still here for tomorrow.
Absolutely. And here comes the first quote, which I learned back in September at our online event, thanks to the very impressive new friend we have, Klaus Rasted, when he quoted Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I think that's also something what we try to do this year. What for you was the hardest thing to overcome in 2020?
The hardest thing was the monotony of being in the same place every day, which is currently my kitchen. It might look like a studio. I'm actually in my kitchen here. And it's been nice to create a little area where I'm surrounded by planes and whatever else it may be. So I do enjoy that. So yeah, it's simply not traveling. And I haven't seen anybody who I would call somebody who's really in my network, because of course I'm here in the UK working in Africa since the middle of March. That's been the hardest part, not having human contact with people that I can share those experiences with. And that's the challenge. It's about how do you share experiences with people when you're connecting through a computer sat in your kitchen. It's very, very difficult. But I also wanted to say, because I sort of omitted this from the previous answer as well, but the other thing that's kept us going is we've had incredible support, I'm sure you'll agree, from all of our partners and supporters and sponsors. We couldn't have got through this without them also embracing some of the events that we've done and the new formats that we've brought on board. So, massive thank you to all of them, because literally you've kept us afloat.
Yeah, I think you are continually going to my next question, where I want to like turn the page a little bit, going from all those buzzwords of 2020, like unprecedented, devastating, and there are a few others which are don't want to use today on the podcast. So let's look on the positives. What were your top three or top five or top 10 highlights of the year? You can name
Well,
how many you
top
want.
ten's pushing it, you're right. I think top ten's definitely pushing it. I think there's a couple of different things. There's work related things, and there's other things as well, because we've all got a life outside of what we do. And the first thing, to stick with the work stuff, we held Africa Tomorrow, which was the first virtual event for African tourism, hospitality, and aviation ever, in July, and it was incredible. We had 1,000 people, we had 120 speakers. We had networking, live networking actually happening as good as you can do it through a computer, but it was fantastic. The amount of conversations, breakout rooms, and exhibition stands. And it was just so well received by the community. So that was an incredible task, because we worked with our wider team at Bench Events to put that together. And I think it really injected some optimism at a difficult time for the industry and for the continent. The second one is AviaDev Europe, which of course was your baby, and you did an amazing job. The first route development event that took place post-pandemic, and really the first one that was a virtual event. Great conference. You had the studio going, showing us all up with your incredible sort of background and everything else that was going on, which was fantastic. And then loads of airline and airport meetings, because we need to talk at the moment. And we need just to retain those relationships and try and say, right, you're having a tough time, I'm having a tough time. How do we get through this together? And that's the only way we're going to get through it. So incredible job with AviaDev Europe. It looked great, felt great. I'm sure the attendees agree as well that it was a damn good effort for the first one. I think in terms of other things, highlight for me, I got to spend so much time with my daughter this year. It may be because everything was closed. We were only walking to the park and back, or riding the bike. So it was giving her that opportunity to enjoy the simple pleasures and spend time with her during the lockdown when she couldn't go to nursery. We didn't have childcare. It's been a difficult year for me personally with family stuff. So that's been a real shining light, and the relationship there is just fantastic now. Another thing which is very close to my heart, there's been a huge number of gorilla baby births this year. So it's really exciting. They're up to, I think, 1,069 mountain gorillas now. When I started with the gorilla organization,
it was below 1,000, I guess.
It was about 850. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an incredible story, and it needs to continue to be told. So, for my daughter at Christmas, I've adopted her a gorilla. I'd recommend anybody else out there in the UK, you can go to the Gorilla Organization website. There's lots of other ones that do this work, but it's such a vital part. There's only 1,000 of these incredible animals left in the world, and it's the most human experience you can ever have to go and visit them. And I've been lucky enough to do it. So that's a real highlight. It just needs to be preserved. And then the other one is probably Sunday night. So that was what the two nights ago, when Manchester United beat our old rivals Leeds United 6-2 and we played the best football I've seen for about 15 years. So that was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I didn't think I'd see it, to be honest. So it's the small things, but these are some of the highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to a lot what you just said. I mean, we are similar. I have a daughter as well. She's a bit smaller. I also got so much time to spend with the family, which is great. And sometimes I am even afraid to say that personally, this was a great year for me, actually, because I improved. I trained. I'm in the physically best shape ever. I learned to cook. I learned to bake and all that stuff. So. Yeah, I totally agree. Personally, or having that time, on one hand, of course, it hurts not to be able to talk, to fly, to travel, to meet our great partners all around Europe and Africa. On the other hand, that time you can spend at home with your loved ones also is very valuable. So let's let's take a look into the future to finish our special episode today. I know you follow quite a lot of professional blogs, event manager blog, and all that stuff. So, from the event perspective, what do you think? How will 2021 look like?
I think recovery will come slow. So I think digital events are with us probably forever. I mean, they already were here. You and I had never done a webinar before April, but now we've done tens. We've done 50 or 35 or something crazy, either for ourselves, with clients, for other people, whatever it may be. And that is enjoyable, but obviously you need that kind of captive audience. When people were traveling, that kind of format didn't really make sense, because you just couldn't get the live audience. People were busy; they were flying and they were working on practical things. So I think live events will come back, and they'll come back very strong when they finally do. But it's going to be a bit bumpy, I think, in 2021, and we're going to have to rely still on a lot of digital communication, especially for the first half. I also think that the trend from the feedback that we get is people want shorter events, more regular, but shorter events. So pop along for an hour to learn about something, or to listen to somebody that's something that we've launched this year is, of course, the live podcast, where we've brought some of Africa and Europe's brightest lights to the stage and spent some time in their company. So people seem to like that, but we're very open, you and I. If people listening to this want to disagree with that and say, actually, Jon, this is what we want, then please, we are here to listen. We only want to create what you want to listen and engage with, not what we want to do. So I think it will be regular, shorter events, and I think live events will start to come back as the vaccine is rolled out and people feel more confident about not being trapped in quarantines and having all the onerous testing processes and the costs that are incurred. It's just a big hassle to travel, I think, at the moment, and that needs to be overcome. But yes, I would like to think that virtual is here, and it was already a big part of your and my life before the pandemic. It will be a bigger part after the pandemic, but it won't be all of it. I will absolutely hang my hat on. It will not be the only thing that you and I are doing, because I need to see people. I want to see people. I want to be around people that have a shared passion for what I do and what you do. That's what keeps me going professionally. And as much as it's been great fun meeting all these people on Zoom calls 6 hours a day, and I love it, and all of you out there listening, it's been fantastic, but I'd much rather be sitting down having a coffee or a beer with you, looking over, some incredible site in Africa. So, let's get back to it as soon as we can safely. And I'm looking forward to that day. I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes two of us. And also, we are on the same page with saying that, yeah, as you said, digital events are great, but you just cannot replace everything. And it's not actually just us who is saying that. I remember an interview with one of our partners, Samir Adam from De Havilland. He was interviewing Ato Tevolde Mariam, the CEO of Ethiopian, and he said the same. You just cannot replace the human interaction. We're just born like that. So
yeah, until we become cyborgs, there is no way of replacing that. And I've said this all along through the pandemic, but one of the reasons that it's been okay is because a lot of those relationships that, from a personal perspective, that I had, I've already met these people in my working life. So yes, I'm meeting people for the first time virtually. Do I have the same level of relationship as the people who've been to an AviaDev or I've met at another conference? Of course not. It's not that reflects on that person. It just reflects on, and it comes back to what I was saying before. And if somebody out there can show me how you and me right now can have a shared experience, like you and me going to the top of Table Mountain and talking about that in 10 years to come to our grandkids or whatever, we're not going to say, oh, do you remember when we did that podcast and I was sat in the kitchen, you were sat, because we won't remember it in the same way, simply because it didn't have anything in terms of the environment that I'm in now is the same environment I've been in for so long. And I think that that is the biggest challenge with virtual events, is creating shared experience. And people keep telling me, oh, the brains will come up with it. And I'm like, yeah, but what does it, I'm not asking you to come up with the technology. What does it look like? Like, nobody can tell me that. They just say, oh, they'll fix it and this is great. And I'm saying, no, we need live events. I also think, just to add to that point that I made earlier, I also think that events like AviaDev that are niche, that are smaller, are going to be where people want to go. You're going to go to a specific event for a specific reason. The trade show side of thing, for me, when I'm looking at my events I'm going to attend, the trade shows will be down the list, because it's not as targeted and focused in the results that I can get.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it for today. Final words for our community before we head over to 2021.
Yeah, I think, just to reiterate what we said before, I want to say a massive thank you for everybody who's supported us by listening to the podcast, by coming to the webinars, by, just keeping us going, because it's your feedback and your engagement that makes us do what we want to do. I think as well that we all need to go easy on ourselves and say, look, if we survive 2020, that's the best we could have hoped for. So hopefully everybody out there has got their jobs or kept their business going in whatever way, whatever sacrifices they've had to make. And for those who haven't, maybe they've discovered a new skill or a new hobby or something, and better days will come. But I think the most important thing as well is take some time off. We've been glued to our screens because that's what I do morning to night, because that's the only place I can do work, be it my phone screen, on WhatsApp, on email, on LinkedIn, on podcast, on Zoom. We're on our screens, and make sure you make that time for the people that you're around and you're allowed to see this Christmas, which in my country is a very few, it'll be the same people I've seen all year. But hopefully others of you out there are going to get that time. So turn it off. I think I'll struggle with it, but turn it off, spend that time, be present, because before you know it, it'll be 2021 and we'll be back on the treadmill again.
And I will finish with a quote I received today in a lovely postcard from our friends from Castellón Airport down there in Spain. The quote is from Henry Ford, who once said, "When everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it."
Yeah,
thanks a lot. Me too. So thanks a lot, John. It's been great talking to you today for this very special last episode of the year. And here's to the better and more positive, in the best possible meaning of the word, year 2021. Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me on my podcast, Juraj. Much appreciated.
Anytime, boss.